Hi, welcome to this Excel tutorial video, and today I'm doing a video on the if function or the if statement. The if statement allows you to do a logical test, and depending on if that logical test returns true or false, you will return one value or another value. Nice and simple. So in this example here, I've got some fictitious invoices, I've got some fictitious data, and just as an example, you wouldn't necessarily use this as a true example, but as an example of the if statement, I can say equals, because that's how you begin all functions, if, and there is if represented there, and then I'll put a bracket. It then, offers me a little bit of information and says, first of all, you need to give me a logical test, a question that's going to be true or false. So I can say if this field here equals yes, and I put the yes in quotes because it's text. That's my logical test. Does B2 equal the value yes? And then I put a comma, and it says, right, what do you want to do if it's true, and what do you want to do if it's false? So if it's true, I want it to return it's true, and then a comma for the false value, and I'll say it's false, and then I close it off, press enter, and I get it's true or it's false. And if I just drag this down here, you can see that where this is no, it's returning it's false. So that's quite straightforward, that's quite easy. Let me just go through a similar example. I'm just going to say equals if this value equals yes. Oops. Now, I gave it a bit of text to return if it was true or false. I don't need to do that. Excel has an idea of true or false, yes or no, 1 or 0, some sort of, they call it a Boolean. So it's either true or it's false. It can't be anything in between. But it allows you to select the word or kind of the value true. So if I type true here, and please notice that I'm not doing this in quotes, so it's not actual text, it's a value. It knows what true means. So if I just select true or press tab, and then if I do a comma, I can equally put in false, and then close it off, and I've now got this true. And that true isn't the word true, it's the value true. And if I drag this down here, you're going to see the trues and false values depending on this being yes or no. In some cases, you want to do more than one if statement. So maybe you want to say, is this paid and is my customer ABC Limited? And in which case, do some sort of action. So let me just delete this again. To do more than one if statement, you've got to do something called a nested if. So I'll say equals if paid equals yes. So if my first of my two bits of logic is paid yes? And if it is yes, I want to check if ABC Limited is customer. So the first thing to do is to say, is paid equal yes? And if it's true, I want to do another test to see if the customer is ABC Limited. So I will say here, I don't need to put an equals. An equals comes at the beginning to say you're now writing a function. Now that I'm within that function, I can include more functions. So I want to do another if. I don't need to prefix it with an equals. That's only at the very beginning. So if, and then I'll do another logical test. And I'm going to say if that value equals ABC Limited. So I'm now in the true value of my initial if. And I've started a fresh if, okay? It can get a little confusing. So I'm now in the true value of this if statement, which is in the true value of this if statement, okay? So if that's yes and this is true, then both are correct. Otherwise, I'll say, maybe I might say paid, because the paid part is true. And then to finish this if off, I'm going to close the brackets, and you'll see now that it says you're still in the true bit of this first if statement. So I then put a comma, it takes me to the false value, and I'll just put an empty bit of text. And if I press enter, this here says paid, because yes, it's paid, but that is the wrong customer. But if I pull this down one, it should say both. It does say both, because that's true and that's true. And if I drag this all the way down to here, eventually we should get some that are empty, because they haven't been paid regardless of the customer. So there is a logic to this. And if I click within this, now that it's written, if I click it within this, you'll see this little B2 and this little C2 are slightly coloured, so it shows you what they're referencing. So logically, when you kind of move about, it's going to tell you which bits of the statement you're kind of in. So this says, first of all, is this true? If it is true, then is this true? And if it is true, then return both. If they both aren't true, but this is true, return paid. Otherwise, don't return anything. And that's the logic. And you can have a load of these things in here. So let's imagine I want to actually include all three of those values. So I'm going to say equals if that equals yes, then. What do I do if that's true? Well, then I'm going to now evaluate this next column. So I'm going to say if that equals ABC limited. Then it's going to say, what do you want to do if this is true? Well, I want to evaluate now the third bit. So I'm going to say if that is greater than, let's have a look at some examples, greater than 300. Then I'm going to say all true. And then that's the true bit of this third element. Then I'm going to put here that paid and customer, because they were the true bits. Then I'm going to close off the third if statement, and I'm going to do the false value for the second if statement. So if it's paid but the customer is not ABC, then I'm just going to put paid. Then I'm going to close off that if statement with my bracket, and I'm going to do the initial false valuation for my first if statement, and I'm just put a blank page. What this should now do is, if I pull this down here, all true. Yes, that's ABC limited, and that is greater than 300, which is what we put here, our logic. Here, yes, ABC, but it's not greater than 300, so paid and customer were true. And then these ones here, none of it's true, and these ones that were paid, but the customer wasn't ABC. Now, one last thing I want to show you with regard to this if statement. And I've shown you there that you can do if statement within an if statement within if statement, and you can go crazy and you can have as many as you like in there. I don't know what the limit is. But you can do other things. You can include other functions as well. So here I've got these values are determined using a VLOOKUP on sheet 1. So I've got these invoice numbers and I'm returning these values using a VLOOKUP. I do not need to do it in this way if I don't want to. So what I could do is I could say equals if that equals yes, then true or false. So that's what I showed at the very beginning, and that's fine. But I can equally say, all right, that's the result of this VLOOKUP. If I know that that VLOOKUP works and I'm happy with it, I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to say equals if, and instead of saying B2, I'm going to say the result of my VLOOKUP equals yes, true, false. And that will do the same thing. And just to show you, this invoice 8 is not paid. If I go to here and I make invoice 8 paid and come back here, both of those are now turned to true. So you can include your VLOOKUP. This is just saying, rather than looking here, so you don't need to have these VLOOKUPs as columns. You can use your VLOOKUPs as a reference within your if statement. That's the end of this video. I hope you found it helpful. If you've got any queries or comments, all feedback's appreciated. Thanks a lot for your time. See you next time.